welcome back to another session. And today we have who we all call fondly JD, that's J Datta, and he's being hosted by Shiva today. Shiva's back in the hosting seat. And JD and me go back a long way. He was a senior, but I learned graphic design from JD. My first job when I started off was with JD, who was heading the creatives. It was in artistry, which was a division of O&M. And we also had a company together called the Wright Brothers. So I must confess, JD came up with the name, so I will not take credits for that bad name. So I'm going to now hand over to Shiva. So he's going to take us through JD's journey.
Cool. Thank you. Thanks a ton, Sajid. JD and I have been kind of talking about how to take this forward, make it interesting, not be very boring and monotone. So the idea is to not talk only about personal work, but kind of talk about milestones that have happened. To start with, I think it's a great commonality that we found that actually JD, we have actually been meeting over time, over his life, over my life. I don't know how many times we cross path, but the interesting thing is that we've actually seen a whole bunch of stuff. I think most of us are quite blessed to be in a generation that has pretty much seen the advent of television, the advent of computer, the advent of internet, the advent of mobile phone, smartphone, not necessarily mobile and smartphone, the advent of e-com, and a whole bunch of things forward. And I think JD, fortunately, a little bit of me and lots of JD been involved in this entire stuff, except for TV. I don't think you did anything with TV, but yeah. But I think largely been involved in most of these things, and that's a fantastic story. And I think there is quite a bit of story that lies there. And to start this off, we have an interesting question, which actually I've been thinking of for a long time. So there are a lot of people, actually, I would say the nation wants to know, are you a Bong or are you a Gujarati?
Right. Well, as it happens, I was someone who was born in Ahmedabad and raised in Ahmedabad, went to design school in Ahmedabad. So I pretty much never left Ahmedabad, unlike you folks, many of you actually, till I left NID. So it makes me partly Gujarati.
Is it JD who's frozen?
Okay, can you hear me, see me?
It's clear for me, Shiva.
Yeah. Can you hear me now? All good?
Yeah, all good now. Yes.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think very interestingly, I have the name that I currently carry has a Gujarati angle to it because it's not the name my parents gave me. So I was Joydeep, and I think most of you will remember me as Joydeep. But as it happened, as I was getting my passport done, and as usual, when it was in a major bit of hurry, I realized that they always go back to your school leaving certificate for that. And in the school leaving certificate, I had the name Jaideep Bhai Datta. And that's not what I had ever signed up for. My NID certificates, everything was Joydeep. I mean, so far I've been Joydeep throughout my 10th, 12th board, everything. And I was in a major hurry, and I kept telling these guys that, guys, you need to change this. And they said, well, bribe us to at least drop the bhai. But if you want to make the J joy, then that requires court affidavits, some 3 weeks of waiting, put an ad in the newspaper saying anyone's got any issue, problems, then come forward, etc., etc. So I said, forget it. I'll stick with Jaideep. And that's how the Jaideep, the deep part got removed. And that's how I think the genesis, the Gujaratification of my name happens.
Right, right.
So that's it.
And when you actually thought that you would join NID, I think, unfortunately your dad met Mazumdar. Isn't there a story there?
That's right. So let me do one thing. Let me project my screen and let me tell you the
Lovely.
story.
Do that.
And what I'll try and do is keep stopping the presentation in between so that we can chat. I think there's a lot of conversations that we can have, I'm sure. So let me start the screen. Okay, so yeah, as we said, I think people don't refer to Ahmedabad as Manchester of the East anymore because the Manchester of the West is no longer known for what Manchester was then known for. Sorry, it's a mouthful, but that's the idea.
Jerry,
Uh,
sorry, there's one small thing that you got to do. You go to the other screen and
yep.
pull your tool out. There is the entire color tool, which is actually occupying space on this screen. So can you just move that out, please?
Okay, great.
You know
Let
what
me.
I'm saying? Yeah,
uh,
that's it. Just shut it off. Yeah, that's perfect.
And I think your volume should be a little up. JD can't hear you well. Shiva is
Yeah,
loud.
I've seen. Okay, I'll try and be little louder. For some reason, not able to get the volume part out. Let me just try once again, one last time. If
That's
not, we will.
that's not bad, Jerry.
Okay, great. So, yeah, so as I was saying, Manchester has kind of metamorphosized and it's no longer what it was known for, textile mills. And hey, that's me wearing my mom's glasses. And this is what Mr. Majumdar and quite a few other people who knew NID. And for those of you who know, Mr. Majumdar was probably in ceramics department. And through some Bong, Calcutta connections, we used to know them. Actually, Mr. Majumdar, I once visited him. I was probably around 7 or 8, maybe, and they used to live in this place called Amit Society, a fairly old place in Parli. And there was this bunch of very long-haired, beard kind of students. And one of them gave me a nice box of yellow box of like lots of crayons, some 12 or 6 or 8 or whatever kind of thing. And I remember this person's name, and I remembered for a long time. He is
Guys, somebody's got to go mute.
so. So our man is was called MP Ranjan, and we had a nice chat. And I think I liked what he told me about what he was doing, and I don't remember much of it, but it found the whole thing quite interesting. Anyway, my parents were pretty cool about it. Whether I became a policeman or whatever I became, I think they were fairly cool. I think we as parents probably a little more kind of all wound up, but I think in their generation they were pretty okay. Whatever you wanted to become, you could become, and not really. I mean, earn money. Honestly, that's about it, kind of. And so here I was in my 11th, I think. The whole school visited NID, and I'm sure some of you guys must have already been studying there. And one of my classmates remembers me saying that one day I'll study here. It was a beautiful place. And I've been before to NID again. Very, very beautiful place, very green, very unlike the Ahmedabad which I grew up in. I mean, I had a great time because I was mostly playing outside on the streets. And but NID was so green, so different from the rest of it. So yeah, I think Shiva, in case I'll probably stop here and maybe you would have some questions and then we'll take it. I
No, I
see
got
my
a note. I mean, actually, I got a note and a question. So the note is
okay.
that Mr. Mazumdar looked like he. I mean, of course, he was in ceramic lab, but he looked like he was kind of frozen in 70s for some odd reason, right? Did he look like he was frozen in the 70s in general with those long collars and denim stuff and things like?
I think he
Um,
remained frozen. He remained frozen for a very long time, and I think
right.
MGD and he then moved in the same block of apartments and all of that. So I would meet them once in a while. So tragically, he started losing his memory, and very interestingly, or kind of tragically, he went back to his childhood. He went back to the 70s and the 60s and the 50s, kind of
Oh,
whatever.
damn! I didn't mean it that way at all.
No,
Damn,
but
that
I think
was
that's
yeah.
what interestingly happened, kind of. So
Right.
he started inhabiting mostly in his childhood. Very interesting. So yeah.
Pratham Banerjee ragged you is what when you actually entered into NID and stuff like that, right? Like so
Yeah, I
was
think that was a funny one because obviously everyone knew I was a day scholar. And so Pratim Banerjee comes in and says, "Hey, Facha, come here." And his first question to me is, say, Hojabor law. That's from Sukumar Rai's collection of poems and his short stories. And obviously, I said Hojaborola, and Pratim was like, "What? And you're Gujarati?" And I'm like, "No, I'm a Bengali who's been here." And I think after that, I couldn't take Pratim seriously for any ragging, and I think Pratim also kind of mellowed down, of course. So yeah, and
Yeah,
that's
I
the
couldn't take Pratim Banerjee seriously anyway. That's a different story. Um, uh, Cycle. You used to cycle to RID? What's the deal? I mean, and how far?
that was almost like early years. I think when I joined NID, I think so. My dad has always kind of been a business, or largely a businessman. He actually started life as a researcher in Atira, which is the Ahmedabad Textile Research Institute, whatever.
Right.
And then he moved on to, so after a stint as a researcher, because he was into chemical engineering and all of that, he moved purely into mechanical engineering, and he started making his own printing machines. And those were the years when I think his business was doing pretty badly. And I think we could not really afford a bunch of things. I could definitely afford a cycle, and I could definitely pedal. And I used to do like 9 kilometers one way. That was like 18 kilometers a day. Though I must say it did nothing much for my chubbiness then. I was still fairly chubby, if you some of you remember me then.
Right. Somebody couldn't recognize you recently when they saw you and thought, who was that?
I think a lot of people don't. I remember, I think I went out with Nisha and a few other people, and I think it was Shalini. And
Ah, right. Yeah.
Shalini was properly introducing me. Hey, I'm Shalini, and I'm like, I know you, and and these guys are like, hey, this JD, this is like, why you sort of like doing all this formal? But I think a lot of people, after like years, when they meet me, they just can't recognize. Of course, now I've got a beard, which is a different story anyway.
Right. Let's move on. Let's move on to the next thing, JD.
One thing which is bothering me is that one of the types has actually gone for a toss. The choices and whatever you're saying is not Helvetica. But anyway, I think I'll kind of keep my type OCD aside and I'll move on.
Which is the right time to talk about type anyway. So, yeah, we are right at
Absolutely.
the
I think
same place. I mean,
so.
UNLC does not exist anymore. You know, April Grayman's poster is just a figment, or rather a small part of our imagination now. Nobody knows what the hell that is anyway. Talk about
Yeah.
this. Talk us through this stuff, the love for type and all this. Talk us through it.
Yeah, I think type was such a became so very interestingly in year one, right at the first few months, or I think first month or 2 months, I have an argument with MCP because he wants me to do kind of a calligraphy and lettering in a certain way, and I can't because I'm a left-handed and person, and all these brushes and all these, not brushes, the nibs of the pens are meant for right-handers. So MCP is like just making it up, kind of look into it. So I was not sure where this heads off to, but anyway, I think MCP then goes away for some time. He lets me be, and then Mahendra comes in almost a week later and say, you're right, and I'm trying to figure out some pens with like the right nips for you. So apparently he had gone, and I think this is a great example of empathy. He started doing a lot of his work, like gardening, sort of watering plants and all of that with his left hand. And he realized that a lot of it actually was pretty difficult. So it must have been difficult for me. Of course, later I found a soul kind of guy in Ravi Mokashi, who's also left-handed. He is. I'm still ambidextrous to a great effect, and I think we have a story to tell about that.
JD, we lost you. We lost you.
Whoops! Can you?
Yeah. That's good. Yeah, go
Oh,
ahead.
back.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So
Ambidextrous is where we left off. We'll come to some ambidextrous
ambidextrous.
stories later. Yeah, but go ahead.
Yeah, we'll come to the ambidextrous story later. But people like Ravi are, I mean, they can't function with their right. I mean, they have to do everything with the left. Whereas my power, which is grip, which is usually to do with like batting or something, is right. A precision, I can do both left and right, but I prefer left if I can just do left. So anyway, I think that was probably somewhere the beginning of my love with letter forms. And type is both very technical and both very artistic. And I think this is probably what I liked. These were some of the examples. I think Emigre was like fresh. Emigre was wonderful and beautiful.
Kidi
Some of the
Sans, and I can
Kiri
see
Sans,
Kidi Sans out there. Yeah,
there
yeah,
is this thing called Totally Gothic, which I think I would die to sort of get a like a download a pirated version of it. And I think Natoji was all into this compressed typefaces like the Brody ones, and he probably had a secret collection, a stash of all those typefaces. So very interestingly, I think for me, a lot of these guys, and I'm sure for many of you, these were the gods. I mean, Brody and Carson and a whole lot of them, April Grayman. And when I
April
look
Gaiman.
back
Yeah,
at yeah, April Grayman's stuff was like wonderful. I mean, it just blew your mind. It was something so different. And 10 years, forget 20 years. I mean, 10 years later, when you talk to people about many of these, they don't exist. It's like the gods also die. They also have a shelf life per se. And very often, this is what I talk to many of the young folks, especially those on social media, that the shelf life in social media is even shorter, even smaller. I
yeah.
mean, if these grades can disappear, you remember one day that all these guys, the Jonathan Ivey and all of these will also be history. Actually, I was talking to Suresh sometime back, and we were just talking about the fact that some of the greats of the Bauhaus era, the Walter Gropius, and all of them. I mean, yeah, they're part of history. I mean, people move on. I think the present is more important. So yeah, the
Yeah.
present seems like
Gods.
everything.
Yeah, the gods come with the expiry date, I guess. And
That's right.
Neville Brody, in my case, fell from grace and, in Curious. He kind of fumbled. I mean, people who actually attended this stuff know what I'm talking about. He actually pretty much crashed down from jumped off a cliff. So yeah, that's interesting. But then I want to talk about the when a curve kind of falls further down from where it should be. Mahendra Bhai used to say something to you, and it's just quite interesting. Go ahead, say
I
it
think the
in your
first
own
time he
words.
said it, it was like your ears went little red. And I said, exactly does it? He said, it sacks. And I said, what? Um, it nothing to do with sex, I hope, kind of. Is he meaning sex or what is he saying, kind of? And then I realized that he means that your G or an O is sagging by maybe half a millimeter and probably a millimeter, kind of. It is sagging, it sags, is what he was trying to say.
And you thought it was a piece of appreciation. Wow, that's sax.
That's like, yeah, total sax, kind of. No, it's
Right.
sagging.
Right. Very cool. Very, very cool. All right. Uh, the first instance where technology affected your what you created. Let's talk about the font that you made. I know that I'm jumping fast, but then we got a lot of ground to cover. Font that you made, and explain the idea of this. What is the logic behind doing the weights and variants of that font? Your Dup project.
Okay, so before I go very quickly, I'll take a detour via
Oh yeah,
our
sure.
super
Damn,
crazy
yeah.
batch that we had in in um, in our what first year of the second year, essentially the first year of communication design. We did this typeface together called Bejod Samini. I mean, there were a couple of groups. Our one group was Bejod Samini. I think it was Benu, Joydeep. I'm not sure. Was there Sanjay, Nisha, or Nilanjan? But all of these. But I think the word Bejor, which is like unique and unparalleled, kind of describes our batch very well. Probably we were the most unparalleled, crazy bunch of people ever. I mean,
But
this
I thought
happens
that's what
once a
everybody
hundred.
say. Every batch says the same thing, no? Isn't it?
Probably we have some stats to prove it. I think Suresh could probably supply
Cool.
some more. We actually
Cool
made
idea.
some stats to a t-shirt also, a wearable stats t-shirt. I think Arnab and Priya did one. But yeah, it's a crazy set of batch overall. I think each batch is, but I found our seniors were a little more, or maybe they had matured and we had become more gentle. And I saw the crazy side of everyone. That, by the way, is Elias's diploma project, and I think me and Manish hijacked it. Um, by the way, I taught type. So I think at one point of time, Mahendra Bhai got me as a type design teaching assistant and some famous people there. Again, to digress, on the top left, a guy that is looking over Dahiya, that guy is Prithviraj, sorry, not Prithviraj, Prithvirjeet, better known as Pokhiraj. And Pokhiraj was a super entry character. He just got on my nerves absolutely. And one day I was like complaining super like too much with of that to SM Shah. And SM tells me, अरे यार जो पॉलिश किया हुआ है उसको पॉलिश करने में क्या फायदा है जो पॉलिश नहीं है उसे पॉलिश करो. I thought about it and I thought that was actually a good one. And that guy really wants to learn. He wants to know. Maybe I'm kind of just reacting to the way he's like Joydeep Da, and he would come and kind of talk to me like that, very bong way of, hey Joydeep Da, and kind of, I'm like, oh shit, he's here again. But then I realized this guy really is like a sponge. He wants to learn, he wants to know, and sort of. But sadly, I think Prithvijit passed away. He could not. I mean, the week he was supposed to submit his DIP project, he had an accident, he passed away. And yeah, one of the many people who pass away and I mean, we have seen kind of over the period of time. So yeah, I think moving on from that story, I think this is the punch who graduated finally before I go to the DIP project. Suresh is kind of, we have added him there for comfort and for camaraderie. The Adhikaris are first couple. They graduated together. They also got married, the first probably in the batch. That's me.
Yeah.
Sorry, the
You
Bong
got the
sister.
photos coming up anyway, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so that's there. I think that's Elias and me. Smell no evil, hear no evil. That was the sort of tagline for that. And oops, actually, let me just go back to your question, which I completely sort of. So this point was called rescue, and rescue was resolution quotient. The idea being, and I won't go back, so I'll kind of, oh my God, this escaped from me. So anyway, the idea about rescue was that it's got to be a resolution dependent typeface. So if you're going to fax it, you remember there was once upon a time a thing called fax. If you faxed it, then it would default to a certain resolution. If you had to Xerox it or photocopy it, it would work on a certain resolution and so on. I mean, it was actually sort of by inspired by Eric Spiekerman's Officina Sans and Officina Serif later on. Very, very robust typefaces. Eventually, I realized this is a pretty shitty idea actually, because everyone is always keeps going to the next best thing. I mean, suddenly resolutions change. Suddenly you will forget 72 dpi, 144 dpi, so on and so forth. I mean, eventually everything moves, technology moves so fast, and yeah, you'll end up with 1600 dpi and 3000 and 6000 dpi very, very soon. Even a truck driver wants to buy an iPhone. That's the aspirational nature of technology, and someday they will probably want to do that. So yeah, I think it was probably like an infatuation, and then I realized this is pretty bad. Something that I keep giving an example of, that don't design for the least common denominator. That's a bad idea.
But I thought that it was a good departure from what people were doing at that point of time, where you actually consider contrast and typeface and the detail of it based on the resolution it's printed in. Yeah, I mean, I think as an academic exercise, all of us were absolutely excused from doing shitty things anyway. So that's okay. That, that's fine.
I think you did it for the novelty value of it, some to some extent, saying, "Oh wow, you know what? There's a story here, and I can sell the story." And then you realize, it's actually it doesn't hold water, but it's okay.
Right. Let's go ahead. Let's go ahead further. You put up your City of Gins. I
Yeah,
think
so
it's
let's move to
interesting.
subject.
We meet again in the sense that after NID, this is where we meet. I am in Delhi working for Ray and Keshwan Design, and you come in. Let's talk further.
So Sujata was my guide for the DIP project, and if many of you might remember, there's always was an R plus P plus question mark kind of thing in photocopied A4 sheet, and so I became one of those question marks. I joined Sujata in Delhi. I mean, I really enjoyed working with her because she always had a point of view and a very interesting way of looking at things. And the reason why Sujata kind of hired me also partly to explore the idea of a digital type foundry. And this predates maybe something like the ones that we have today, like Indian type foundry and all of that by about 15, 20 years almost. Sujata was interestingly going to Berlin with Ram. And the idea was that we would try to sort of link up with Font Shop, and then we would create our own fonts. She had worked with Matthew Carter and done her own fonts like Banaras and some of those. And then we would sell to, it was a evil plan. You know, you create typefaces here and you sell to Germany, and Germany licenses it. Then in India, even if people are like left, right, and center copying it, and if Natoji is downloading it, pirating it for free, and even I am, it doesn't matter because somewhere the licensing costs have been met. I think that was a very bad idea. Finally, it just didn't take off. But we ended up, I think, having a great few months. There was Natoji, Simrit, you, me, Gajare, who's not NID, but kind of is NID now. I think Milan Mudgil also landed up for some time, or maybe he didn't.
No, no, he just was passing by. There were too
Ah,
many people passing by. Anyway, yeah, yeah.
so there was our man, what's his name?
Tarundeep Girdhar was there for a while. Yeah,
Exactly, yeah.
yeah.
So Tarun Girdhar was there. I think it was,
We gave him a tough time, didn't we? We actually, poor guy. No wonder he never worked after he went and started teaching. I think
I
we
think
gave him a tough time. Right.
yeah.
Yeah, and like, yeah, let's talk more Delhi stories, right? Let's talk about furthermore Delhi's. Okay, some of the work. I love that Harita logo. The idea of actually marrying a Devanagari ha and that arrow swooping up. I mean, it looks dated today because it is dated. But other than that, it's a fantastic piece of work. Talk about it, Jerry.
So actually, I had completely forgotten about it, Shiva, until you reminded me there's the
Yeah.
Harita logo, and trying to find Harita, I stumbled upon Indal. I think it exists probably Indal. Harita still exists, but what they've done is
Harita
they've
does.
done use the logo. They've actually carved the logo. Now the logo looks thin and emancipated kind of thing. Anyway, the first one was for me, the Humayun's tomb, the first thing which went into print. And I had a great time because I'm also a history buff. So I think I spent a lot of time in the gardens, the Asht Behisht and all those kinds of ideas around how gardens should be made and how they transported some of those ideas from Afghanistan to India. And I think the grid actually follows that structure overall. So that was good fun. It was for Intact. And what else? We did quite a few things. There was one Kutch project which never ever got finished ever. I mean, no one ever finished it. And I think it became like such a legend that everyone who got it kind of said that my job is not to finish it fully, but it's just to continue it and give it, hand it over to someone when I'm going. So I think we had a couple of things like that. And I think
This is
we
a
also,
book, is it? Was it a book?
it's a book.
Yeah.
It was a book
Oh,
on
I
some,
vaguely remember working on something to continue and give it to somebody else. I think
right.
lots of us did that. Yeah, lots of us did that.
Tradition, I
Right. Yeah.
think it was at that point in time in Ray and Keshav in Delhi.
Yeah.
I think good, of course. And we used to probably, there was Vinu Samuel. Oh, by the way, there was rationed computer time. So everyone had to put in a log. And we
Yeah.
had like, I don't know, 5 or 6 max, and you had like 2 hours or 3 hours every day. Actually, now thinking about it would have been a good excuse not to do any work. But then I think we did work beyond the computers, obviously. And I can't remember what work we did beyond the computers, but we did something which was not to do with computers.
No, we did
So
plenty. I mean, like, for example, all the projects started with serious thumbnailing to quite a bit of detail, actually. Uh, and, the entire grid that you were talking about on Humayun's tomb, you actually drafted the grid before taking it on the computer. We would have never, ever done that on Aldous PageMaker or Illustrator anyway. So yeah. Did a lot of
Jayu,
work.
please watch something for her. Jayu.
Guys, who's this who's not muted? Can you mute, please? It's Siddhartha. Okay. All right. Go ahead, JD. Yeah. I was just saying there is lot of work that was done outside the computer. Go ahead.
I guess, yeah, you're right. We used to conceptualize outside the computer and then kind of bring it inside. And so that was the part of, I mean, you had to finally execute it on the computer. So I think the plan was all done pretty much. So
Right.
yeah,
And then we came across William Dalrymple,
that's right. Yeah.
Mr. Dalrymple's City of Gems, which was quite an interesting view on Delhi in some way, and pretty much visited every place it said. Let's talk about everything outside of work. City of Gems, your trip
Actually,
it's
I
in
remember.
Simrit's car, and so on.
Oh, that was the time when we almost got arrested. So here's Simrit trying to learn on her dad's Maruti 800, I think, and I'm a trusted sidekick. So we are probably cruising somewhere along the New Delhi or the diplomatic enclave and end up in Rajpath. And here we are now down the glorious Rajpath, and suddenly this whole car kind of sputters and it goes up in smoke and comes to a standstill. When the smoke clears, I think we see ourselves surrounded by about 20 people pointing guns at us. This was a time of insurgency and all of that. So obviously, someone must have been thinking these guys are going to blow the car up. So then we have to explain, and Simrit's dad comes in handy because I think he's a general, and then he comes in with his all his cars and things like sirens sort of blazing, and comes to our rescue, and we are not taken to a police station. So I think that was so we had a lot of these kind of escapades. I mean, Simrit, I remember she kind of locking in her key inside, and those kinds of things would be. So these
Right.
are the
But
fun
I
failures.
was wondering what you said to the police, like when they actually asked, so what do you guys do? I'm a type designer. Is that what you said? Like, what did you even tell them? And I can imagine a bunch of policemen, Tagda policemen, big stopping you in Rajpath, and I'm a graphic designer. I'm a type designer. This,
I'm a car doctor. Okay. It was.
right. And
I
then
think.
we used,
Sorry, please go ahead, Shiva.
no, I was saying that we used to actually have this madman called Vinu Samuel in the office who actually used to complain constantly. Go ahead, tell us some stories about Vinu Samuel.
No, I think Venu was like so he came from Calcutta. He had worked with Response and had come to Ray and Keshavan, which had the Ray was the common one there in both. And Vinu used to hate uh, Delhi and Delhiites and would complain. And he had to sort of remind himself that every morning he got up, he would like pretty much rehearse some galis first, and then step out of his house and make faces and all sorts of things. And he was interestingly, Vinu is still very much in Delhi. He still rehearses his galis in the morning and then and kind of does all of that hand gesturing and kind of then goes out. But he used to have this bunch of funny words. It became like our second language, like path marks for something and all sorts of weird. Actually, people didn't get it, right? Because especially in the computer studio, when we would be in our dialect, people would be thinking these guys are quite mad, actually.
Right. Right. Let's move on. Let's put your slide up. Next slide up. Let's actually move further.
Okay. I think so. Oh, actually, Shiva, I finally actually moved into the house which you vacated or you didn't probably even take up because that landlord loved you too
No,
much.
I was
So,
there, I was there for one day.
oh, you were there for one day. Yeah, right. He was, I forgot what was he, Mr. Chatterjee or
Yeah, something like that. Mr. Chatterjee,
Shibam.
who used to call Shibom, who called me Shibom. Yeah.
Shibam, when Shibam ran away. So I
Yeah.
had that house finally. And yeah, I bought myself, I think I used to get a salary of 7,200 in Ray and Keshavan. That was actually a lot, I mean, by those standards.
Oh,
I
yeah.
even brought
Sure.
fridge,
Yeah.
all of it. Um, and and yeah, finally I decided to sell everything on my fridge and whatever, and get all the money and go on a long travel. So interestingly, in this travel, there are three other people involved, and I think all three of us at that point were jobless. We were looking for meaning of life, answers to the universe, etc., etc. One was a Kashmiri a friend of mine from Ahmedabad called Rahul Dhar. The other was a very good friend, Srini Srinivas Bhaksa, and I think So interestingly, towards the end of NID, I used to hang around a lot with Srinivas and Srini and his seniors, kind of like Manisha Mohan and a lot of them, kind of Murli, Srini, a bunch of, most of them Mallus, but I think they were non-Mallu, non-card carrying communist members also. So essentially there was Bhakta, there was Sridhar, and there was this wonderful friend of mine, Isha. She was in Calcutta. This guy was in, so essentially east, west, north, whatever kind of south, everything happened. We went on a very long trip, but I was the only one who did the trip end to end. The idea was to go right up north and go right down south till Kanyakumari. And the angle was don't ever buy a ticket. I mean, you buy a ticket just when you're about to board, but let's not kind of make long plans. We just kind of figure it out and go. I think it was Jack Kerouac to some extent, and the whole, I think we did some Banaras trips like that also.
Right. Like the Indian version of beatniks, really. Yeah.
That's right, something like that. So I think my first, so bunch of us went to, and this was again on a different set of friends, went to Uttarakhand and Badrinath, Kedar. So the idea was the Valley of Flowers, and Badrinath is somewhere on the way. So we did Badrinath, the Valley of Flowers, pushed buses because they went down in the gorge in Rudraprayag. Wonderful places. I think wonderful places, wonderful people. The hill people are like magnificent. I mean, they're really beautiful bunch of people. Did then came down through Uttar Pradesh. Banaras, of course, is a mandatory stop always. Down to Calcutta, where again Srini, me, and Rahul, the three of us, went to Sikkim, and we went to Gangtok, and we did this trek out there called Sandakphu. Again, came back. I think the idea was also to probably go to Assam and Northeast. Asia is from Northeast. I mean, she's grown up there and to some extent Rajasthan. So the idea was to sort of move, but Northeast again has a lot of, or then used to have like this inner line permits and like loads of kind of bureaucratic hassles. So
yeah, I think it's probably the right time for you to say that you eventually married her. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we came back to Calcutta. I think Srini had his fill of Hilsa because I'm much more Gujarati when it comes to fish. So I probably won't touch Hilsa for sure. I'll kind of stay with all the boneless varieties as much as we can. I mean, there's no...
Or a dokla.
Or a dhokla, or a papra.
Right, yeah.
It's like all bones
Sure.
kind of as...
Right.
Anyway, I think Srini and I had a fantastic trip. I mean, that's where I think it was just me and Srini going down south after Calcutta. So we had a whole bunch of kind of seafood, lobsters, and kind of crabs, and God knows what. And I think we came down to Hyderabad. But this time, I think our clothes were stinking. We were stinking. I think we were on the road for almost 3 months. And I think I've been the longest guy there. And in Hyderabad, we met up with Heman and a bunch of people. I.S. Mathur had joined a school called Z something, Z Animation, Zika, I think.
Yeah, Zika.
Animation, right? Yeah. So I think there were a few people. I think Srini decided to sort of get a job there itself. We eventually, I think we abandoned our plans to come back to go to Kanyakumari. We took a detour to
Bangalore.
Bangalore.
Didn't you guys come and meet me in Rain Keshan Design?
I met you in Rain Keshavan Design, and which had by then shifted to, I think by the time we took the detour and you guys had shifted straight away to Bangalore.
Right.
These are some of the pictures. That's Rahul on the left. That's Isha in the middle. Rahul, me, Isha. I think Srini. I couldn't find many pictures. This is one of recent Srini pictures. Of course, we had a lot of interesting talks on the way about life, cosmos, universe, everything. And they're all connected. And we took a detour. Finally, I got married to Isha a little later. And yeah, and then ended up in artistry. That's in Ahmedabad, where Sajid comes in, and we start a company called the Wright Brothers, partly because we have a very nice plane, a photograph of a plane, which kind of says, hey, how about this as a logo? So I think you think about a logo first, and then you think about a company. So we had done things like that before as well. So yeah.
Yeah, actually, we've done one between you and I, where there was actually a hole, laser cut hole of a suitcase in a in a on a letterhead, and it's called as the Stolen Suitcase Episode Design Company.
That's right. Yeah.
This is not even, we didn't even start a company, but it was an idea. It was a great
Yeah.
idea. Again, one of those things where the logo was thought before the name was thought. Yeah, but it
I
was a
think
great name, the Stolen
it was a
Suitcase
great.
Episode.
I think
Yeah.
that's what designers love. This whole pointless exercises in terms of great names and great logos. That's when I say, wow, this is man, this would be like, and then you realize 2 years down the line, you find another cool name and a cool logo, and you say, forget that. And I forget Wright Brothers. We're going to do one way, which I did with Jatin, by the way, later on after Wright Brothers. So I don't know what happened to Wright Brothers. We did something. I think it was good fun. The logo and business cards were always fun. So yeah.
Maybe Dulake used to get us work, no?
Oh yeah. That's right. That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
There was some work. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We've got this once in a lifetime that's come up. Go ahead, talk about this. This is this is quite a thing. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I think this was for in artistry. So there was Arvind Lodaya who used to work there. There was Sumit Dey, Arvind Lodaya, Sajid. So I think a lot of generational stuff happening kind of
Kind of
across.
sounds like a refugee camp. Go ahead. Yeah.
Well, Arvind is everyone used to like be very afraid of Arvind. I don't know why, but he used to kind of this intense look and like type on his keyboard with great ferocity and kind of like used to make a lot of sound. But he was great in terms of teaching me that writing is very very important. I mean, he wrote very long form text.
Mm.
So again, we talked about this once in a lifetime opportunity, which is doing the logo for India's 50th um, independence anniversary. And so I think we all pitched in and we had quite a few logos. Sujit, were you there by that time by any chance?
No, I didn't pitch in for that.
Right. So I think I pitched in a few, and I thought there was one, there were a couple of very nice ones, but this was and eventually something which Arvind did, and I kind of tweaked a little bit, kind of made it. And we were supposed to go and meet Deve Gowda. We actually did go, but we keep joking that Deve Gowda probably fell off to sleep, and in his sleep he could probably chose some random logo. And so the logo happened. The 50th year of India's independence anniversary happened. There is that logo. I think people loved it so much they distorted it every day. And every day I would see in backs of trucks and scooters and God knows what. I mean, it's a distorted logo everywhere that you would see. You got it on postcards, you got it everywhere. I mean, people in Paris were making bad representations of that in flowers and cauliflowers and God knows what. So, looking back,
Cauliflowers.
yeah, I mean, farmers did cauliflowers probably, and people
Right.
did flowers and something like that, There was like so much love and affection for this logo. And you just realize that, you know, it's a pretty okay, I mean, if not a downright shitty logo. I mean, I can't say that, but yeah, okay, fine. It's a logo. And it's nothing to do with the logo, really. It's the context of the logo. I mean, if you got three prime ministers, unfortunately now all dead, but standing in front of a logo, I think that legitimizes a logo. You can make the most shittiest logo. It's kind of like someone Nike. I think if you think about Nike, it's like, yeah, it's this kind of cool applications of Nike rather than a logo per se. So yeah, anyway, that's again my story around pointless form exercises. So I keep
No,
going
but
back.
then it made quite an, I mean, what you were saying made quite an impact when you actually told the kids at IIT Guwahati the same thing, right? Like, so what did you tell them?
No, I told them about the fact that just beware of once in a lifetime opportunity because they come many times in your life. So they might come in like 3, 4 times. I'm probably sitting on the fifth or sixth one right now. So yeah, I think I have a different, maybe at the end I'll talk about my definition of once in a lifetime. So that's probably very different from these ones. And people sell it to you as saying, once in a lifetime, a boss. नहीं मिलेगा फिर से opportunity kind of. And now when you look back at it, like, yeah, there's 75 also was once in a lifetime. 100 would be like, oh my God, this is once in a lifetime. So oh, yeah.
So we are at 1997, JD. You kind of realize you're a diabetic. And there is an interesting story about how you find out that you're a diabetic. Tell us that.
So yeah, I think, so interestingly,
You
I
can
was,
actually forward the slide if it's contextually correct to forward it. Yeah.
I'm not even sure now. I forgot what's like.
Okay, that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. It's just us. Yeah,
That's
go
right.
ahead.
So,
Yeah, okay. That was Mugdha.
okay.
Yeah, go right there.
Right. So I think so the story is this Morris is, by the way, for those of you with kids, is nothing to do with the lemur King Morris, King Julian, and his sidekick Morris. But that's Mauritius. But anyway, the this is connected with your diabetes question. So I was on my where we were, so Aisha and me were on our way to Melbourne. I had got this thing for a master's program in Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology, RMIT, and the decent scholarship and all of that. And it was again, I think those days it was called multimedia, and I'm sure a lot of you, I mean, I know Malvika and a whole bunch of people would have gone into multimedia, Nilima and Deeparatnam, and everyone was doing multimedia then, which was a way of authoring essentially, anyway, part of our interaction design journey. And and yeah, I think one of the stricture this thing was that you have to have checkups done for Australian if you were to stay there for a very long time. In our case, it was 2 years, and so Aisha has gone to Calcutta to say bye to her parents, and I've gone. And this is just the before the time when I need my passport, and then I realized I never ever had a passport, and everything is tight. And Jaideep Bhai, Joydeep becomes Jaideep Bhai, and finally the Bhai is dropped. So anyway, after all those hurdles, I go and meet this doctor. He's some 83-year-old Brit doctor who still stayed behind in Pune. He kind of does a test, and he says, you know what? I mean, son, this is like super serious. I mean, my suggestion is don't go to Australia, kind of stay back here, get yourself uh, treated first, and then sort of go, because your diabetes is after a point, my measuring systems will not even be able to record it. I think I was at about 490 or some such number like that. It was very crazy. And I'd been losing weight before that. So I think this all tallied up. So that's the reason for my weight loss, of course, and partly all the trekking that I did. So anyway, I come back, and interestingly, that I take the call. So actually, he had given me a cheat kind of a way of getting out if I wanted to. I could come back next day. I could pop in a whole bunch of pills. His machines will show the right numbers, and he will let me go. But he said, "Don't do that. It may not be a good idea." Kind of. Your call, finally. Kind of. So he was a nice guy. I took his advice. I kind of stayed back. We didn't eventually end up in Australia, but we ended up in Mauritius because, again, through some Ogilvy connections, through a common friend called Benita, and she had worked at Ray and Keshavan. She actually referred someone, and there was this agency called Hello Circus, which is part of Publicis worldwide group. And yeah, we were actually doing all the salary negotiation over fax. And anyway, I end up in Mauritius,
So I
Mauritius.
remember you telling me there's, that entire idea of 1% land, 99% fun, nothing to complain about, and it's bloody pissing off. So go ahead, tell me about it.
So I think the question that I always used to get asked, so where is Mauritius? And it's like, oh, that's like the little dot. Oh, this typeface has changed. It's so bad. Anyway, this little dot in the middle of nowhere. And the second question I would get is, oh, is it very far? Do you get to stop over somewhere? So like, no, like it's all sea. The moment you leave any Indian shore, it's like straight the Indian Ocean pretty much. So yeah, I think Mauritius is super beautiful. I mean, this is Mauritius. This is Mauritius then, and I hope this is the way it is even today. I'm pretty sure it is. It's absolutely beautiful, and I think Asia and me land up there, and we look at the sky, and the sky looks so different. The land looks so different. Everything looks like, oh wow. I think that wow lasts for about 3 months, and then we realize, oh shit, this is like, so this is what 99. You have dial-up internet, you have once a week English movie, once a week Hindi movie, and lots of Bhojpuri movies and lots of French movies, and some random Bhojpuri programs and some Tamil programs and all of that on TV. And Mauritius doesn't have nightlife. You have beautiful beaches, so you can kind of go and explore. So I'll just go to the next slide. So this is like what you see on the right corner. I think beautiful beaches. We had this friend, another guy called Sarbajit, and I think he's there today. So Sabzi, as we call him, was the other stranded bong. Firstly, I thought Sarbajit was like Sarbajit Singh Tuteja or something like that from Punjab kind of thing. Then we realized he's a Bengali. And the three guys knew each other, and apart from that, there was nothing to do. I mean, after six, the Mauritians would let loose their dogs, and the dogs had like they were all on the streets. Thankfully, we had this big, huge car, and that was another love of my life. This 4x4, and we would go anywhere and everywhere. Beautiful, but it's this term which I then use, which is like it's so beautiful that you feel like vomiting. So it's a bit like that. It's pristine, it's beautiful, it's got gorgeous weather, gorgeous beaches, coral reefs, you name it. Kind of people are good, people are nice. They actually love Indians because they don't know what Indians are capable of, or there's a connection with Indians for
Yeah.
them. So yeah, I think that was
Yeah, it's like kind of living in a screensaver.
almost previous of
Almost
sorts.
there.
Very nice people. Oh, by the way, the another hard parts. I used to manage a team, and getting the team to work on a Monday and Tuesday is very hard because they've just come back from their weekend in the beach, and they are like fatigued or they're tired. And on Thursday and Friday they can't work because they're super excited about going to the beach. And so Wednesday is the only day you can get them to work really hard. And we had pitches and we used to like, oh my God, work a lot. Middle is where the office was. Beautiful place, a plantation building. Behind are the Mocha Mountains. On the left is my car. That's the car. That's parents in Mauritius, Asia. I mean, we had a lovely time. And of course, this picture. So I also managed to get Jatin there. I think Jatin was the first one to escape. I mean, he got the idea of it's so beautiful that it's kind of sucks in a big way. So he escaped first. So this happened to be at the home of my driver. So I had a driver for a brief period where this guy would show me around and get me to acclimatize. The reason why he was chosen, he was Nasir Muhammad. For Nasir, we were the closest connection to his homeland. So I think he came from somewhere in Bihar, but he spoke Bhojpuri. He was the only guy who could actually understand a Hindi film end to end, though his Hindi was very bad, but still. And for us, we were like gods come from his homeland, and he invited us all for a biryani. And there is Nasser sitting like the king in the middle of it all, his entire family there. That's Sarbajit, the guy with this eyes popping out. My parents are there, Aisha's there, everyone's there. Everyone had to like, everyone, because he knew I would be going to the airport to pick someone up, and he would say, oh, you have to come to my place for biryani. Hum biryani khayenge kind of thing. So yeah, I think the love of the homeland.
Yeah, Sarbajit sent out a smiley on the chat. Hey, I think before we kind of talk about this work piece, I want to talk about two things. One is, just wake the entire crowd up to the fact that this is during the dial-up internet time. 97 was when that entire that happened, the entire dial-up internet thingy, and they had to connect painstakingly to internet and stuff like that. So things are not very evolved. But that's not the main conversation that I wanted to. I want to talk about the idea of growing up doing print design and how it is helped. And we've spoken plenty of times about that. I mean, with alcohol and without it, we have spoken about it.
Yeah.
But let's talk about one of the stuff that I used to uh, like a lot about is the rigor. And JD, let's talk about that. Go ahead and tell me this entire idea of doing design for print.
Right. I think so. So I think interesting time at which you touched upon this because on the right, what you see is my very first website, which is kind of entirely hand coded. And I think the beauty of it was the fact that here I was in the middle of nowhere and people would not know where I was at all. But I could publish this site. It would be out there within minutes, not in seconds those days, within minutes through a dial-up connection in my bedroom in Mauritius for others to see and consume. And I think it was brilliant. The idea itself was like, wow, I am self-publishing, because otherwise you need a printer, you need people to sort of put money to sort of publish this whole thing out. And I think print is a very different medium. And I think I'm going to just illustrate this with the next example, actually, since we touched upon this. This is some work for the Sun Resorts. And one of the sort of work was the one on the left, which is an annual report. By the way, again, talking about the gods have a shelf life, or gods have an expiry date. The interiors, I mean, everything, whether it's the spoon, the cutlery, the upholstery, everything was done by Philip Stark. And then Philip Stark was God then. And yeah, so I think this is just to sort of remind ourselves of our fallibility and limited shelf life per se.
Yeah,
So
actually, recently, if you ask who Philip Stark is, they'll say he's an old Instagrammer. Go ahead. Sorry. Didn't mean to interject.
it's pretty much this was an annual report which had to reach Germany, London, and somewhere else, or New York, I think, on time. Otherwise, you would be sort of, you would have a penalty attached to it, and that penalty would be a few $100,000 actually. If you made a mistake, there was a penalty for it. I mean, mistakes were something that you did not do in print. I mean, if you did a mistake, it was super expensive. And an annual report probably was a great example of that. I mean, same if you did one for, let's say, a Darling Kindersley book, and you printed 100,000 copies of it, you had to live with it for a long time. Or if it was terrible, then you had to withdraw those books. I mean, there is no way. The mistake was costly. There was a real number attached to this mistake. So I think what we did, and I think what we were talking about earlier, that we used to draw grids and all of that before we went to the computer, was that rigor of it. And I think, and I often wonder now, and I think we've talked about this before, Shiva, is that do has this whole entry of people into interaction design, where they can make mistakes and correct mistakes and keep making and going back and forth, made it a little less rigorous, or not less rigorous? Has it made it a little more kind of, chalta hai sort of thing? Because a lot more people are entering the field. I mean, earlier, if you think about outdoor advertising, print, annual reports, all of that, I think you would actually not take it lightly. It would be super serious. I mean, it can't be anyone who's not a self-taught. I mean, yeah, you would have a self-taught designer. A lot of people came from art, but you needed a certain years of experience before you started working on that. So yeah, that's probably my rant on this piece.
No, but I remember like in reincarnation design, like our faces being rubbed on Chicago Manual of Style every time you make a mistake. Like Chicago Manual of Style is something that we live by. Is it space before a comma, after a comma? Do you leave spaces on either side of a semicolon, or nobody cares now? Which is, I do not know. Actually, sometimes I really wonder whether we are holding back to those strands of thing that is connecting us to the nostalgia in some way. But yeah, rigor, yes, it is. You miss it.
Right. I think the angle there was you have to get it right the first time, because that's the only time. And I think now it's about getting it right. Yeah, you could get it right the first time, the second time, the third time. The whole idea around iterative work, failing faster, all that is very alien from that world, because in that world, you don't, your prototypes are probably, or the number of prints that you take, and your kind of books that you bind initially are your prototypes. Once you are in the run, you are in the final run. There is no chance, there is no error room for failure, pretty much. So I think
Okay.
that world has changed quite a lot.
Yeah, true. Okay. So we continue this game of name, place, thing, animal. And the next place that we go to is London. UK. I wouldn't
Right.
say London. Bristol.
And,
Yeah. I mean, London for me, but yeah.
totally, it was London first and then Bristol. And I think Bristol, for those of you who love words, has a very interesting way of saying English, which is called bristle, and they have this habit of eating up words. And there is this book called Bristle with Pride, and a load of bristle, and a whole bunch of them. So I used to have this girl who was reported to me, who had a typical Bristolian, a Bristolian accent, which a lot of words would be eaten up pretty much in between. So it's a lazy way of speaking English. Anyway, I think Bristol was also home to some word, what is that? Kingdom Brunel. So Brunel is
Isambard,
Isambard
Isambard Kingdom
Kingdom.
Brunel.
That's the
Yeah.
man with the big chains. As
Yeah.
a kid, I grew up seeing his pictures in encyclopedias because he's the guy credited with all those suspension bridges and tunnels and steamship, and so he's the man, the inventor behind a lot of these things. Though from my window in
Oh,
Bristol's 100 Victoria
sorry, I
Street,
got to interject. Victoria Station is by him. So you
that's right.
cannot get better than that. Like,
Actually, Paddington is also by him, if I'm not
Paddington
mistaken.
is by him. That's right.
Paddington is by him, and the place I used to work, 100 Victoria Street, is very close to the station, which was his first prototype for the rest of it. So I think, again, going back to print and their stuff, I think he's doing it for the very first time. So this is the first prototype, and then takes it to the others. There's this Avon Gorge Bridge, which is the very first, also in Bristol, or a Clifton Suspension Bridge, sorry. That's the first one. So he's done a whole bunch of these things, working for a company called circle.com. That was me, my office, the view from the window.
That is that is not Isambard working for Circle.com. It's JD working for Circle.com. Yeah.
I'm putting up things in a typical Bristolian manner.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was me. We kind of went to live in this place called Redland. That's Manish and Ranjana. They had got married and they came to see me. And I think they were, poor souls, were tired after some amount of walking. Isha was actually in Manchester. So she was doing a master's in Manchester with a very eclectic bunch of people from all over the world. I mean, Kenya and the Balkans and Jamaica and all sorts of Japan, Hong Kong, everything kind of. They had a very eclectic bunch of students, and she would come to see me every weekend, or I would go. And so interestingly, getting the job for this one um, was actually a bit of stroke of luck, because I was supposed to go and meet this guy, an Italian who had lived in South Africa and who was very open-minded about building a multicultural design team. Because design, I mean, generally Indians would not be hired for design roles at that point in time. I'm talking about 99, 2000. I mean, the only thing Indians could do was code. They were the software guys, and that's it. Design is not for Indians, not tech design. I mean, ornamentation, decoration, all that is great, but not design for tech. And so here I am in the London Underground, and I managed to lose my ticket. And I can't come out, and this guy catches hold of me, and either I'm supposed to get a fine or kind of it's a small sentence and all of it. So it's like one long drama happening there. Somehow Isha manages to find the ticket. Maybe it had fallen somewhere down. I managed to go and meet this guy. He was leaving for the day, and this was the last thing that it was on his calendar. And he offers me a job with a ridiculous salary. I mean, this is an unheard of salary in those days. And to top it all, he says, well, if your wife is going to be living in Manchester, I'll give you first class return tickets by train to Manchester and back. I mean, either your wife or you could use it, doesn't matter. So it was like the beginning of the bubble. I think that's probably, I didn't think about it that way. But the whole ridiculousness of it was like crazy. I think, I mean,
so I remember at that time was when I kind of working in Sapient, and I remember going with a brick, the compact old laptop that used to get one brick of a thing. You go there, the minute you land in Sapient, you get a 21-inch monitor, an Aeron chair to sit on. Everybody sat on an Aeron chair. And you had a Apple Cube on your table. And it said, this is like the industry's on LSD. Everybody's tripping on acid. That was the start of the bubble.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I visited you guys. During that time in Bristol. Yeah.
I have that picture coming up. I mean, from the apartment that you came to. By the way, for the benefit of those who don't know, Manish has moved on from being the guy who got fatigued walking a few kilometers to a guy who runs 300 kilometers a day. And he sent me this picture to include as well. So there you are.
Right. Yeah.
Don't miss it.
Right.
So this is probably, so our apartment, I think we had two apartments. You came to the one in the bottom right, which had a beautiful view of Bristol. I mean, we were at the top of a hill, and it was a tough climb if you were just walking up, but it was a beautiful view. This is Asia being in a more summery mood. And the second apartment in Redland, of course, we kind of kitted it out to look like straight out of an IKEA catalog. I mean, with a salary like that in UK, I think we were being stupidly ridiculous, and things would obviously were going on well. Of course, we were in a bigger island, and the bubble was getting bigger. We didn't realize that till then. Um, what I wanted to draw your attention to is all the phones. I'm sure Shiva, you must have thought of like getting a Palm, or you maybe had a Palm trio.
I did. I had a trio. Yeah.
That's right. I think it was like, yeah, I need to have a Palm trio. I'm going to get to the next one, not this one, but it's like iPhone 11 or 12. Just that, I think Hemant also mentioned that in his talk. I think these were the gadgets of those era. This is pre coming of the iPhone. And then, of course, my friend Steve Crook, who's on the other side of the world, writes Don't Make Me Think. And very interestingly, this is one of those books I'm sure those who work in this industry would have definitely remembered at least once a month, if not once every week. And to people, listen, guys, I mean, go back to basics. Don't make me think. Don't make your users think. But
video.
so interestingly, the more I think about it, I think the world wasn't thinking about what it was
That
doing.
is me.
And
I think somebody's got to go mute. Sorry, is it Asha? Asha, can you go mute, please? Thank you. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
so I think he's trying to sort of figure out one very deep point in terms of like, the world wasn't thinking much, and God knows what these guys were thinking. And so yeah, our dream run of Bristol just came to an end quite abruptly like that. Because the industry collapsed. Actually, I remember, I'm sure many of you will remember where you were that day watching this scene unfold. I was supposed to be in Boston that week. Somehow I didn't end up going there. I stayed back in Bristol. I was watching it from a very, very fancy sort of cafeteria with all those pool tables and all of that on our sixth floor. I think someone said, "Hey, listen, this plane which has gone in," and I'm like, "What?" Like, sure, it's not a Hollywood film that's being redone or something. And then everyone gathers. The office entirely gathers. Everyone's given up work, and you're just watching like something crazy unfolding. And within matter of weeks, I think the bubble completely bursts and disappears. Our Tottenham Court office used to be beautiful again, pretty much like what you were saying. That closed down. My team, I think we were waiting to get fired, and we just got fired. We actually didn't have much time left. And thing is that we just had about 4 to 5 weeks to either find a new job or just pack up and go. And that was it. So I think beautiful IKEA catalog style home just went. We kind of wrapped it all up. We're not sure what to do with it. And we just kind of packed it up and left it with some in parts with friends. We gave away a lot of things. And we kept some of it kind of overall. So yeah, I think it just collapsed. I think you kind of saw it very first.
I remember going back and realizing. So the Sapient office where I used to work used to be in off Bank Station, which is like Lloyd's of London. You can't get more prime than that, next to Lloyd's of London. And then next time, I think after a few years, I had gone on some other work and was passing by, and I realized that has moved way out of town into a small, into an IT park rather than trying to do anything else. And was an entire building, and they moved to like 3 floors of an IT park, scaled down completely. And I'm sure the Aeron chairs were sold, and whatever money was made was used for a cafeteria there. So let's move on, JD. Let's move on. I think this is the time you take a big step to come back. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, I think it was kind of a sense of, I can't just wrap my head around it. Like what happened? We went from getting this ridiculously high-paying job to almost like having no job overnight and no jobs around to sort of get back to. I think it was a time for some soul searching. Thankfully, at least it allowed me to pay off Isha's school fees. She got a recent scholarship, but whatever was extra, no debt really we were completely debt free and nothing was there per se. But it just made you re-examine. And I think it made me rethink in terms of like, hang on, design is just one of so many different bigger pieces, and how does it all come together? And that's when I decided to sort of go back to UK again. But this time, us changing places, me being a student. So I went back to the University of Manchester. They had a Salford part of it, where I decided to do MSc in design management. The interesting part here, so um, this is a part where you do 50% of your courses with the management school, and you're actually taught at the management school with people from all over. So there were people from, God knows, Turkey and Greece and Poland and everyone else. But these are all engineers. None of them are designers. And you're learning strategic management and international marketing. You're learning finance and accounting with these guys. And 50% of your courses are at the design school. So very interestingly here, this is my hostel bottom left. We were on the 10th or 11th floor. So some floors were reserved for people who are married. This is our set of students who were actually doing this course with me, um, from Portugal, China. There was this guy who was very interesting, half Chinese, half Brit. He is now into meditation and he keeps going in the Himalayas. So he's left everything behind. That's me. It's almost like back to school again, and it was 2 years. Very interestingly, now I don't have a job. I don't have a super paying job like I used to have. Like my teachers probably earn much less than I used to earn, and here I'm earning nothing almost. So I go back to sort of doing like odd jobs like teaching and teaching in the sense like not really teaching, but managing transcripts, managing programs, structuring things. And because I had worked for almost 5, 6 years, and I also taught, thankfully, with Dahiya and Group, I could actually start to make a few courses and start teaching them. So I used to then become an evening tutor for non-design students. And this is what I did. I used to either correct papers, which was a higher paying job than being a data entry operator. That would be one option, or option would be to sell shoes. Actually, I even tried doing that. I tried to see if I could actually get a job in a, like a retail guy selling,
Footlocker.
yeah, something like that.
Hmm.
And this, you're too overqualified for that. I think you just can't do that kind of. So yeah, I didn't get a job. That was the funny part of it. But yeah, anyway, I had a decent one to sort of take us through. Um, Interestingly, started doing some projects and with something called the Salford Accelerator. So when you think of Manchester, you think of, so here I'm from the Manchester of the East to the Manchester of the West. And the Manchester of the West is in decline. And Salford, which used to be the place where there used to be a lot of canals from where the goods of Manchester would eventually go out, that's in a huge decline. And so the government essentially had something called an accelerator, which in today's words would be sort of a VC part, sort of their accelerator program called the Salford Innovation Park. And we tried helping a lot of local businesses do something with design and tech and branding and all sorts of things. One guy who got a decent leg up from that was David Roberts, bottom right. Super into guy, a guy who had actually grown up in Manchester selling um, tickets to Man United and just moved his way up. He had a small company, and I think his company benefited in a big way with this combo of design and branding, and redesigning CRM systems and redesigning the front end, or even rethinking how you sell certain parts. I mean, how do you package parts of the business? So I think it was a very interesting one. So there we went. I think David gave me a proposition to start a company, and then we had Ideas Foundry, and Shiva, you were part of it as well.
Yeah. So 2003, I had started my company in Bangalore. So it's one of our first projects. Idea Foundry was one of our first projects, doing the entire website and all that stuff. Go ahead, put that up. I think you have a picture of that too, right?
Yeah.
Somewhere. Yeah.
So I think the first office of Ideas
There
Foundry
you go.
was right next to where David's office was, which is when you see between Lakshman and Dada, there is one building which is at the back. Right, that's the building where we were in for almost a year and a half, 2 years. The only downside was every time there was a Man United match, we would have to close in early or get our cars out of the parking and go somewhere else. I think this place would become like really hard to kind of get your cars out. All the fish and chips shops would open up. I think it was a big crowd, and there were certain match days. where it could get even violent as well. So I think that was the bad part. The good part was that you were right in the middle of. So if you can see in the back, there is one fence that you can see.
Yeah.
That's where the football stadium is, and here is the cricket stadium. So this is right plonk in the middle of the cricket and the football stadium. Very interesting set of clients. We actually ended up working for the government quite a lot, working for universities. The Northwest is full of universities, a lot of experimental digital projects for universities. Roche in Ireland, Roche in Germany. We even did a project for Roche in South Africa. So I traveled to South Africa, my first South Africa visit. But I think it was an interesting mix. When I think about it, I think this is what probably all of you, especially those of you who work in as consulting companies, Sajid and the group, I'm sure you get that high of winning a client, delivering the project. I think winning the client is the very first part of it. And I think this is what I remember most about those years. You know, you pitch, you kind of win that. You're probably pitching against companies which have got British designers and you're still winning those projects. I think though that was probably a big high for me. We eventually moved to something called Salford Keys, which is where currently BBC's offices are. And that was probably an upmarket location. And David was someone who was like, yeah, we need to show that we are kind of moving up in life. And, you know, we got to have an office in a swanky location and all of that. And he got himself a Saab, he got me a Volkswagen, whatever I wanted, a Touareg or a Touran and whatever, whatnot. So I think, again, I could get that hint of, you know, are we going overboard with this? Are we kind of spending beyond our means? Because I think the earlier one had just taught me that. And actually, I was getting the sensation that something was about to fall, something was about to break again. But before that, I think we had some interesting work. We did a lot of kind of experimental stuff. I think that was a time when branding was moving to the digital world. So it was just not the offline, but the online. So you did a brand offline, which also had a web, which also had a CRM system, which also had a login, which also probably had some sort of a mobile, not like today's world, but something there. And of course, this is the time when Arjo was born. So Manchester has special memories because of him. And here's a young man, Bala came to visit us, Arvind came, quite a few people came to visit us. I was still taking notes of typefaces everywhere I went and how they were doing, what they were doing.
That's
So yeah, I think
officina semi-sans or semi-serif or whatever that stuff is. Like.
semi-serif, that's right, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Or
yeah.
semi-serif, could be that as well.
So if Arjo's in, what? He's doing 11th, right? He's in 11th right now.
He's in the 10th.
Oh, he's in 10th. Okay, yeah. So 2 years from now, if he says he wants to go on a 5,763 mile stuff without you guys, of course, you not being there at all, will you allow him?
Yeah, I guess I will. I think the only thing is, I'm sure there will be a bunch of instructions there. They
Right.
wouldn't have thought about it. I mean, they wouldn't have said, keep your mobile charged at all times.
Right.
You want your mobile to keep charged. So,
Right. Yeah. I mean, I keep thinking that like where we just left for like just generally left to see the world around and come back whenever, just report once in a while. And technology has kept our kids in a leash in one sense. That's why the question. It was more rhetorical than actually. I was not expecting an answer, but good. Let's talk about 2008, the bubble burst.
yeah, so I think, I was getting this feeling, and I kept telling David that, listen, things are not going right. I'm seeing signs of it, which was in terms of larger deals falling through, kind of a lot of projects being stalled, not our projects, but projects generally in Manchester. Manchester was in the middle of a building boom at that point. Those were getting stalled. So I think a lot of mills were getting converted into sort of very high-end apartments and lofts and all of that. I was starting to see something is not going the way it should be. And David being an eternal optimist and, like, yes, we have to push on and all of that. And so I think that's where we diverged, because my feeling was that we should kind of either look at cutting our costs, and I moved back and I actually worked from India. and he gets me the projects, or I keep coming back, or and he was like probably like, no, I think we will survive this as well. It's not going to be a big one probably for him. Unfortunately, but just to add here, David passed away a few weeks back. He was actually healthier and fitter than ever before, and he's been doing his Kilimanjaro and cycling to the end of the world, all of that, and all of a sudden, about 3 weeks ago, he passed away. Man with a huge heart, and always used to say, "I'm the one who supports design because I put my money where my mouth is," and he would actually support that. I mean, truly that way, kind of. So anyway, I think interestingly, at that point of time, Sujata, through a common friend of ours in Geneva, she had reached out and kind of she was telling me something like, "Are you still
Yes.
selling sugared water, or are you tweaking things out there in Manchester or England?" So there are things to be done. Actually, sorry, I'll kind of just go through this, and I think this was the point I decided to close down on my part of Ideas Foundry before we got into the loss making. It was probably at a zero sum game again for me. So I'd come back a full circle to where I had by the end of circle.com, which is just you start at the start, you start at the beginning. I mean, you're back to ground zero in some ways, and you probably have a huge amount of experience and learning. And I think you probably your spider senses tingling more with how to make better financial decisions, hopefully next time. So that was a time when I decided that, so this is a funny moment where we have gained and we have lost. And if I were to sort of the hisab and kitab of life, I think it might be coming down to a zero plainly kind of thing. But in terms of experience, I was richer for sure. And I was headed back to Bangalore because that's where Sujata was
Let's
telling me that.
let's
Sorry.
hold that right there for a minute, JD. Quick time check. We've got like another 20 minutes to probably wrap the stuff down. I know that we are there. We are kind of there. And give it like 5-10 minutes to say your buys before closing at like 5 p.m. latest, right? So
Sure.
just to do the check, let's move on to Bangalore.
Perfect. So that's Bangalore. I think Bangalore was the airport was the big one. Um, this again comes from the flowers that I used to see on my windscreen every morning when I woke up to go to office. Of course, not an easy journey for Asia and Arjo. I think they hated every moment of it. And Arjo was extremely angry at us. He would point at the every plane and say, "I want to go back home. This is not home for me. This is not where I belong. This is not my place." That's it. I mean, he couldn't express himself beyond that. And it was ironic. I was making an airport, and here was my son saying, "Get out! I want to go to the airport and get out of this place again." Of course, there was the Delhi, and again, Gulati and I have a common connection there. We didn't do much. I certainly didn't choose the carpet, for those of you who want to know. Nothing to do with me. Gulati, I hope you didn't choose either, kind of.
Right.
So this was Sujata telling me, like, what the hell are you? This was again one of those once in a lifetime thing. And in a way it was. I mean, we went up and down the runways of Bangalore Airport, Hyderabad Airport, Delhi Airport. We went up the whatever that tower is, the control tower. Yeah, it was amazing to be amongst the first people to see this work in progress overall. That's the office. Someone took these photographs at completely odd angles. So when I actually turn them, they're right. I don't know who took this photograph, but there's everyone. There's Pooja, who's now Instagram influencer, not wearing a sari for now. Narayan, who's been
A
who's
part of
actually
Design Up.
worked with me, part of Design Up. I think he's worked with me with three different companies.
Mhm.
Mona, who and her husband have both worked for me in different companies. I think, yeah, I think it's interesting bunch of things. We actually went to Limoges via
Right.
Paris. Yeah,
Yeah.
you want to talk about
Yeah.
that? What did you?
Yeah, so there was an interesting challenge of a 24-hour design hackathon. I guess that's the first one we actually ever came across something like that, right? Not French, but I'm saying like a design hackathon at all. Something that you got to
That's
kind
right.
of put
I
together.
don't think anyone, no one did that before. I think
No one,
Sujata was super supportive.
no one did that. At least I don't remember seeing anybody doing that. And We had two rounds, one in Bangalore, the other one was in Limoges, where they actually feed ducks to make liver pate. Limoges is famous for that and ceramics for some odd reason,
That's right. Yeah.
right? Yeah, so that's the Limoges story. We went to Limoges, and then that's us in front of Louvre. Is that what it is?
That's right. Yeah. I think we took a long route coming back again, as usual. Any excuse to sort of take a long route, we did that. So yeah, we don't take the scenic route. We take the long route back. So I think we stopped over at Paris, and God knows where we stopped over, and then came back to
I
Bangalore.
went off to Rotterdam to meet
Oh,
Sanjay and
that's
you.
right. Went
Yeah,
to
yeah,
Sunshine, yeah.
yeah. Right, yeah.
True. So yeah, there were some three, four teams from India which had also come in, and they had like teams from all over the world in this very strange, very spaceship-like place in the middle of like nowhere in France, known for ceramics, and they were trying to make it known for web design. I think it didn't work very well, but yeah, it was a good attempt.
No, but
I don't know why.
don't forget the foie gras.
Oh yeah, I
Yeah.
think so. Interestingly, Jalan, who you see sitting here, this guy doing a V on top of his head, he
Hmm.
is a pure vegetarian. He is a Marwadi, poor guy, goes to Limoges, and all he is eating for like the next 10 days or whatever, 3 days or 4 days is boiled cauliflower. Finally goes to Paris and says, I want to have that, which is all sorts of pastries which a little kid is having. He's got that hungry look in his eyes. I mean, how much of boiled cauliflower can I eat? So yeah,
Right.
I had a bad time.
Yeah, they make the best foie gras there. And I saw somebody in my team douse it with a whole bunch of paprika and pepper powder, and and then the French lady who was next to me looked like she will faint or possibly pass out. Plate of foie gras where this guy is dousing with. Yeah, sacrilege, Malavika says. I right. Yeah, absolutely. Go right ahead. Go ahead. Let's go
Yeah,
further
I just
to.
jumped to it. I don't know why I put this here, or maybe by mistake I just stayed over.
Well, that's
But
a
yeah,
lovely piece of work. I think it's nice to kind of have that see that too. Yeah, that's Singapore Youth Olympics, right?
that was a pitch for Singapore Youth Olympics, and actually we also
Mm.
for Commonwealth later on. And at one point, Sujata refused to work for them because she said, "No, this is not the kind of people I'm working for.
Smart
Not
move.
connections, not nothing. We're not going to work for." I mean, we could have recycled the same thing, but we just kind of said, "No, no way we are going to work." And that was what Sujata stood for, kind of. I mean, she had a
Yeah,
belief and she just went with that. So yeah,
yeah. Let's go ahead. Adobe days.
Adobe days. I think that's probably, of course, I think by now, Arjos kind of got used and got used to Bangalore, got used to. So I think we were in Fraser Town, not very far from where Nisha lives currently, maybe actually walking distance. And I didn't know that she lived there. But it was super noisy for us then. And anyway, we moved around Bangalore, and our current place where we live is in way thanks to Adobe. And this was like working for a company which I wanted to work for in the type design days because they used to have a very good type design studio. Adobe had its own. By the time I went to work for them, all that was pretty much over. And so the man on the left is none other than Sitaram Narayanan. So I have a very bad habit. I don't take pictures of people. I don't take selfies. I hardly take selfies. I have to be reminded to take selfies. I remember working for Sujata for a book for Nandan Nilekani. And I go to Nandan Nilekani's place and we have a good conversation. I'm there with the photographer. So Nandan Nilekani is supposed to be shot in different ways, photographed. And he comes in and says, you know what, I can't be bothered to put on a full suit. I'm going to put on a tie and a jacket on top, and I'm going to wear my striped pajamas in the bottom. Is it okay, boss? I said, boss, it's perfectly okay. So I had this conversation when I told Phil Clevenger, the guy who hired me to Adobe, he says, what a fool, you didn't take a shot with him. And I keep forgetting to take those kinds of shots. But Sita, such a geeky thing, I had to take a shot with him because no one knew whether Sita was a man or a woman or what. By the way, Sita has, so for those of you who don't know, maybe Shiva or Hemant should probably talk about why Sita is important in our history.
Actually, Malvika should. Malvika has been kind of talking about. She says, "Thank you. I've always wanted to see the face to the name." Uh, Hemant said, "We always saw this guy's name on Photoshop credits." So that is the deal. Actually, when you open Photoshop, actually from 2.0, I would think the second name on the stuff for some odd reason was Sitaraman Narayanan. And like my Tambram heart went out for that. That's a different story. But there's there was also this Indian guy who was actually listed down as one of the credits, and that's him, Sitaram Narayan.
So
Cool.
I had
Yeah.
to fight Sita, and I realized Sita was married to a German, and he loved cricket, and he would go wherever the cricket took him. And told me, "What a fool you were doing your MSc and went back to UK. You should have come here. You should have kind of come back to." Like I would have told you. I said, Sita, I didn't know you then, kind of. So anyway, we have made it a point every time I go to San Francisco, I always
You were just a name. You should have told him at that
I
point.
don't even know whether you're a Sita girl or a Sita boy or what. I have no idea who's a Sita. So
Right.
he's like, I can tell you so many. You've been a stupid fool, kind of. You should have come to this thing. Yeah, Sita, if I knew, kind of thing. So anyway, I make sure that I kind of always go and will have food with Sita. This, by the way, is the Photoshop floor in Adobe San Jose, where Sita works. Sita is not a manager. Sita never wanted to be a manager. I mean, he's super respected. He is a principal, probably doesn't matter what he is, but he is respected for who he is. So he could just be like engineer, and Sita knows the history of what's where in Photoshop, and he's been just around kind of. So that's my team. You will see Sumit there, right in the
Yeah.
middle. There are a bunch of NIDians in this. Bottom right, Phil Clevenger, the guy who was
And Jamie.
and Jamie
Yeah.
Myrold.
Yeah.
So Phil Clevenger, I mean, he's lost a lot of weight, but when he was just kind of he arrived to India, people mistook him for a WWF wrestler because he was huge. He is 6.5 feet. He is a massive guy, and everyone in the airport, even after I joined Adobe and I would travel with him to Delhi or wherever, people would say, "Sir, aap mera photo le loge?" Like, who do you think he is? He is some WWF wrestler. I think all the security guys would want to take photographs with him. Great guy. He's a fantastic chap to have around. I mean, make sure that every time they come, and this is like taken a few months back in Bangalore before the pandemic hit, we still meet. It's like family, and it's almost like, hey, how's your little boy doing? I mean, little boy is no longer a little boy, but yeah, I mean, I visited them in SF, and this is like a big family of people. I think they're all over now. There is a new Adobe, I would say, set of people in place, but I think that also was a moment where you actually did some very interesting work. 2009 December, I joined Adobe. Earlier, I think in September, October, Steve Jobs had announced the iPad. And the iPad opened up a whole bunch of new ideas that we could play around with. And I think even though we did the usual business as usual stuff, there was so much of work happening, experimental work happening on the iPad. This was a very interesting one again. A lot of work done here on designing to create design systems. And this is where probably the start of the CS library was. And I worked very closely with Debbie Millman, and this is with Paula Scher. And it says Paul Scher, I don't know why, but anyway, Paula Scher in pentagrams. This is again, I remember, shit, I didn't take a selfie with Paula Scher, but anyway. So Paula's office has books are color coordinated, and we had tea and we had a good conversation about India and generally what is happening. But that was the beauty of Adobe. It did open doors for you to sort of talk to people because you realize that a Paula Scher or a Debbie Millman, or you name it, who the gods of design are using the work that you and your team are doing day in, day out. They're probably using it 8 hours, 10 hours a day. And that was probably one of the selling points in building a team for Adobe. That's us, again, visiting the Clevengers and visiting the Francisco and so on. Aj had a good time. The good part about visiting Adobe is you get different views of the bridge, not the usual ones, of course. And then I'm just checking for time.
No, you're doing good. You're doing good. We're doing good. You don't need to hurry, JD. We are all doing good. Just
Sure.
take your time. Take your time. Yeah.
So this is yeah, I'll stop here. Maybe I'll pause here after the Adobe. I think.
Yeah, I think there is one missing thing in between this and that, right? Like I think we need to kind of talk about that too, right? That which is Flipkart. Why Flipkart and why quit?
Right. let me stop sharing just to kind of too much of slides kind of. Yeah, Flipkart was, so I think I got bored doing maybe too much of Adobe, too much desktop work, maybe that was the right way of putting it. And I wanted to get into the world of mobiles, and Flipkart was kind of right in the middle of it all. A lot of conversations with them. Actually, I've been, so very interestingly, most of these places I usually have a conversation which lasts me for a few months, and then I join them. Um, while I was in Manchester, I was in conversation with Adobe. While I was in Adobe, I think 2 years we were talking on and off with Flipkart. And I finally thought I should take the jump and I should explore this whole world. Two reasons for leaving Flipkart. One was that it was a fairly crazy environment. It had probably got a little toxic. It was going through a lot of churn because a lot of people were coming in. A lot of money had come in with that. A lot of new people had come in. People who did not probably have the old feeling of doing something for Flipkart, but let's say more mercenaries had come into Flipkart, per se, if that was the right word, and maybe even I was one. And the second was I had this
Was it
incubator.
also the point where Amazon was in and there was a bit of a threat also happening?
I think Amazon was probably in or was anyway kind of threatening to come in. It was just a
Yeah.
matter of time. I mean, everyone knew
Yeah.
Amazon was coming in. They'd raised $1 billion, and again, it gets into the system in a very different way. The second part is, of course, I had a startup idea which was very hard for me to get rid of, and this is probably following my heart the third or fourth time or whatever number of times. And so the interesting story is this idea has been incubated with another ex-Adobe guy, another guy called Jody Rogers from Seattle. And I think this idea has taken over us. I mean, it just doesn't belong to us. It has completely got us in its grip. We actually did some early runs and all seemed very good. We had applied for this conference called Collision in Las Vegas, and we were kind of in the at least one of those select few who would get a right seat or a right stall right up front where the speakers came in and went. So good position and all of that. So I take leave from Flipkart for a few days, and Jody takes a leave from his company in Seattle. And Jody is a vegan, non-smoker, non-drinker, non-everything. He is my guide to Las Vegas. So you can just imagine.
Like you could have gone with a saint, I mean, a sage, really. Like Baba Ramdev could have taken you to Las Vegas, really. Yeah, right. Oh, Gaiman says no, not Baba Ramdev. All right, go right ahead. Sorry.
No, I think this is the other interesting part is that Jody knows Las Vegas inside out. He knows the entire labyrinth of Las Vegas, and I'm very curious because Jody blocks these completely non-smoking hotel for us. And I'm like, oh, I didn't think about it that way. And Jody's like, no, I'm very, very particular about this thing. So as it turns out, Jody's dad was very much into gambling at Las Vegas and lost a lot of money. Therefore, Jody hates Las Vegas. He knows Las Vegas and he hates it. So in a way, he was a great guide, and he would never stop me from gambling. But yeah, he would always point me the guardrails like, okay, gamble, but don't drink that. Okay, like, just stay away. All these girls will bring you all these drinks, and for some reason, I had never ever wanted to go to Las Vegas all the years. So in Adobe, I used to go like every 6 to 8 weeks. I would be in San Francisco. But unlike most Indians, I've never had a temptation to go to Las Vegas. The only reason I would have probably gone is to see the Grand Canyon. I mean, as an en route to the Grand Canyon, but not really Las Vegas for the sake of it. So here I was with Jody of all the people in Las Vegas, and we win one of the prizes for the most promising startup. And they're supposed to interview us. And we both have full-time jobs, and we both have taken leaves. And so we both disappear out of there saying we have a flight to catch, and boom, we are gone. I mean, we kind of course, disappear kind of that. But, and that's the point where I think come back, decide to leave Flipkart. Jody leaves his company, and we are starting up pretty much.
That's pretty late for a startup, isn't it, Jerry? Was it very late for a startup?
It was very stupid actually, kind of. So I mean, Aisha did warn me quite a few times, and but at the same time, she usually is someone who's very patient and lets me take all those risks. Actually, thanks to her, I can take all the stupid risks from time to time. Um, Actually, someone said, "Have you talked to your financial advisor?" And I had none. So I made one, and he said it's a very stupid decision. But then everything had been done. So yeah, you could tell me how stupid it was. But I think in some ways it was also a great decision because it taught me things. Actually, on the way from Las Vegas, I stopped over at Dubai, and I tried to figure out if Sajid would want to be a partner again. And hey, Sajid, do you want to invest? I've got a great idea. Like Sajid, invest, come, a great idea.
Yeah,
Sajid
you
said,
always go to the sheikh. That's the
yeah,
best way to do it.
yeah, and it's
If you
especially
want money, you go to Dubai, and our sheikh is there anyway.
right. So
Right.
Sajid is saying, listen, I'm shaking up my businesses and I'm kind of trimming the fat. So anyway, let me not get into more businesses kind of thing.
Hey,
So
JD, there's a lot of questions about what exactly was it. Can you actually give us a quick elevator pitch of what exactly was ConfiQ? Incidentally, the name is ConfiQ. Go ahead.
yeah, so ConfiQ is essentially a trip advisor for conferences. So if you wanted to go to a conference, why do you want to go to conference A and why not B or why not C? So, so if you want to go to a design conference, why should you go to Curious and not PDF? Everyone gives, it's pretty much a platform where everyone gives reviews. And there are certain ways to collect reviews and kind of from speakers to food to kind of the programming, the kind of topics, etc. And it gives you a very comprehensive picture. So this is useful not just for people who are for attending, but corporates who are sending 5 or 10 or 15 people or people who are sponsoring. So if you want to sponsor a conference, you want to know how good the rating is of that conference. You better be kind of good. So I spoke to our man Dipinder Goyal of Zomato, and he said, "This is such a bad idea." I said, "Why?" He said, "Because it doesn't exist." I said, "That's obviously the reason why we are making it exist, right?" He said,
Right.
"Yeah, actually, that's true," kind of thing. So I said, "It was a bad idea to rate restaurants until you got it rated." So
Right.
yeah, that's right. So
No, but
I
then he had Zagat when he did that. That's exactly what he means.
that's
So you
right.
didn't have a Zagat, right?
No,
You didn't have a
that's
Zagat.
right. Yeah.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
so I think that was the one. It went, actually, it did get some good traction out of it. Scott Cook, who's the CEO of Intuit, he was
Hmm.
super enthusiastic. TED, which actually does a whole lot of TEDx, was interested because they would want to monitor TEDx ratings through something like this. So if any of you want to get into this idea, I mean, I'm not asking for money. I'll give you the blueprint for free. You can take it and use it if you want to. I would be lovely to sort of see this go somewhere.
Younger
But
the better.
younger the better,
Yeah.
absolutely. I'm not going to suggest for sure this time. So,
Yeah. So then you go to a VC. You actually join a venture capital company.
yeah. So that was the
That is
reason.
like from the place where it burns money to the source of the money. What is the story?
So I was trying to get a lot of people to. So I remember Shiva, you also introduced me to a couple of VCs, and
Yeah, I
you know,
just know them as distant friends. I don't. No, I mean I've got really good friends in the VC world, but never
yeah.
will be a part of that. It's a yeah. Go ahead.
I
Sorry.
think Axel actually we had a very great conversation. This guy calls me back saying there's something, but I can't put a finger on it as to why it will get money. And so we try a bunch of things, a bunch of ways of like slicing and dicing business ideas and how you do it. And I'm also talking to these guys, SAF partners, who are actually very keen, but they're also going around in circles, not being able to put a finger on it. So they'd give me a counter proposition, say, work on your side, like don't spend more than like 20% on this idea, or do it in the weekends and evenings, but you work for us full time. So my first thought is that they are actually, it's a trick question. If I say yes, that means that they will never fund my idea. And I got to say no. So I keep saying no, and they keep saying, no, but why don't you join us? See, there are plus sides and all of it. So finally, I think I'm running out. There are EMIs biting, so it was a very bad decision. There are school fees, and are just grown up and all of that, and he needs more stuff. And so I think maybe this is again one of my terrible things that I've done. So I said, fine, I'll join you guys. So how do I know I succeeded? And they say, well, if one of our portfolio companies decides to offer you a job at a better pay or equal pay than what we are offering you, then it means what we've done is right. And fine, good enough. So
And
next
that's
few,
what happened.
that's what happened. That's what happened with Make My Trip, because Make My Trip was one of the many portfolio companies. There was Swiggy, Revigo, Make My Trip. I just got to know so many different CEOs from Paytm to a whole bunch of them. And I think interestingly, they used to have this conference, which is exclusively 100 people. 95 of them are CEOs. The rest five are people like us. I mean, technically should not be me, but because I was involved in designing the event, I got kind of invited to that. So I met every possible CEO, I mean, from the WhatsApp to everyone else, LinkedIn. So I think I got him to invite it to Design Up. So this was again being part of that small group and thinking, how do they see things? And how do they make sense of the world, which we have a very different sense of? This is going back to my design management kind of structures overall.
Let's
So
put the slides up. Let's talk about Cosmos. We got time to talk about Cosmos and design system. We've got time to talk about design up. That's all we have right now. So let's kind of focus on those two.
sure, I think let's go to, so Make My
What is
Trip
it?
again.
Yeah. What? Yeah. Okay. I'll come to the question later. Go ahead. Finish this slide.
So this is the one which I got the question. I'm like, are you crazy? Make My Trip that doesn't, they don't get design, kind of like, are you sure you want to join Make My Trip? Because, have you seen the design? And my reply was, and I think this is at a time when after Ranjan has passed away, and I'm kind of reflecting back on what Ranjan used to say. And every time I crib to him, he would say, "Tu kya karega isko beta? What are you going to do about it? Do something." I mean, like, don't sit and crib about it. Get out there, roll up your sleeves, and make a difference. That was probably my thought then. I think that predominated my thought. And that's what eventually Make My Trip became. I think the philosophy here was to put the my back into Make My Trip. So sorry about that Helvetica out there. And
Very
system,
apologetic for Helvetica. Okay. All right. Sure.
it's a nicely turned thing which I put in there. It's a different type of computer, so it went. Anyway,
Right.
I think the system, for those of you who haven't dealt with design systems, unlike a brand system, a design system is much more flexible, but at the same time fairly robust. And I think this quote from this lady who spoke at Design Up sums it up very well. We are designing a system of governance, and that system is much more robust. At the same time, it's much more kind of open. So in a way, the homepage that I see for Make My Trip, that I see or Hemant sees or Sajid sees, are going to be different depending upon our context. And this is all real time. That's probably the difference between a brand system and a design system, which are a design system actually consumes a lot of time and effort in the initial days, but eventually kind of becomes a huge investment for organizations. Of course, the other part being that they all look the same, everything looks the same. So this is
So,
what yeah,
yeah.
please go.
So we talked about this thing of the linearity of movement, right? In print, ability to see things one after the other versus this contextual movement for a personal choice. I think that is an interesting thing to bring in right now. Can we actually talk a little bit about that? And I will also hint on one more thing a little later.
Sure. So I think I think this is a very interesting one, because what's the difference between graphic design and interaction? And I think that's what we're talking about. I mean, graphic design is kind of um, set in stone in time. I mean, nothing changes. You pick up the book is exactly as you designed it. Nothing has changed. I mean, maybe it's aged, the papers are a little bit yellow, but things are as it is. Things were exactly as you designed it, right? But with um, interactive systems, it's all very contextual. You could get an error message. It's all depending upon so many factors. And I think these multiple narratives in multimedia, if you think about it, it had controlled multiple narratives. In modern interactive design system, and modern is just like recent systems, it's way more, because you're talking about different phones, you're talking about progressive web apps, you're talking about an app itself, Android app versus iOS app, I think that narrative of multiple pathways is so different and it's so dependent upon time, really.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, so absolutely agreed with you. I mean, even earlier I did, but there was one more stuff that we talked about from a job perspective, from moving from like individual to a team and to the idea of accountability. You know, I
well,
would think that we have lost the idea of accountability, but weigh in, please go ahead.
I think two parts to it. I think there is a collective accountability which has come in. So especially when I look at product tech and design, when I talk about experience of an app or a product, it's very hard to distinguish. I mean, that's the W.B. Yeats quote. How do I distinguish the dancer from the dance? I think it's all one experience. So there is an engineering element, of course. I mean, I can kind of break it apart, but from a user perspective or a consumer perspective, it's very hard. But obviously, as a team, you're accountable. I mean, as one collective team, you're accountable. I think the team has become way more important than the individual. So I think partly maybe why there are not many interaction gods. I mean, there are once in a while you will see, and they are short-lived. The bubbles are much faster to break. Is that you don't have a style. It needs so many people. It needs a village to make a product like this that everyone is involved. I think the team becomes, and I think people like us, we're just guiding those forces pretty much, making sure that you come to an end and that end is just another beginning pretty much. Does that kind of touch
Yeah,
upon what? Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely, it did. Absolutely, it did. Let's actually share some more uh, stuff of the cosmos and then we'll move on to um, design up.
So the Cosmos at one point is extremely functional as a design system, and at the other point is extremely expressive. So if you think of buying hotels or holidays, they are expressive as a norm. We have just launched in Dubai and Abu Dhabi, so we are now tinkering with a lifelong thing, Arabic fonts. Now getting into it, everything is living in the opposite world. So Sajid, you might see more of that in your part of the world. Yeah, this is probably one small part of it, and not all of it is generated by designers. I think it's kind of designed as a system which then auto generates itself. So I know if it's going to be someone who is coming for the third time trying to check if the flights to Maldives are going, you will see this. Versus I'm coming here for the first time, you will see that. So I think a whole system of possibilities is what we are designing here.
So, JD, if we teach graphic design today, will it be different? Forget interaction. I think, will we actually talk about graphic design in a different way? Like, for example, I would think, will atomic design be an integral part of graphic design?
Um, Interesting question, Shiv. Actually, if I think about it, maybe the word communication design is still as relevant today as it was, maybe even more relevant today, because you're communicating through multiple different ways. I think the medium is changing, or medium is diverse, but the message is the same. Medium is the message. I'm just thinking about that. Yeah, it is the message, of course. I mean, the medium, I mean, what you would do on YouTube versus what you would do on an app is going to be different, but there are also overlaps which are happening. So I would say the emphasis on communication, good typography, form, etc., they still remain relevant, but maybe graphic design is now an atom in the universe of communication design. That
Hmm.
probably is another way of looking at it.
Right.
Building blocks
Let's
for it, probably. Yeah.
let's move to the
So,
complexity of creating a conference.
I think
Let's
yeah, this is probably the start of design up and what I was talking about, Ranjan's code. When Ranjan passed away just like that, and Ranjan I worked very closely on one of the projects, which was actually a project for an ID publication, and he made me redo something 17 times over. And we kept in touch, and he would always send people my way for one reason or the other. And if I go to an ID, I would meet him. But it was just very shocking when he passed away. And one of the things which had already been in my head was like generally complaining about the lack of design in tech conference. I mean, there were great conferences like PDF and Curious, but which were broader in terms of design, but something specific seemed very enterprisey or very boring or very like very geeky in nature. So that's when it kind of came to my mind when what would have Ranjan said? And he would have said, like, go out there and do your own. Why do you sort of want to sit there and moan and grumble and complain about it? And so that's what we did. And this is probably one thing we talked about. This is something that Bala would have put up earlier. It became a rallying call. And this is how the first design up came through. I mean, in this, there are multiple. The top row is the very first design up. I think we were all hands up, hands on, rolled up our sleeves and got to work. Phil Clevenger was there. Jamie Myrol was our first speaker. So I think they all pitched in. I was not anymore part of Adobe for many years. But I think it was a coming together of many people from many parts of where I'd worked in. I mean, people from Flipkart and Adobe and, wherever. I mean, a lot of the Adobe guys that had worked with me had become heads of design for some of the organizations. And again, they also came in together. So wonderful camaraderie for the very first one. Second one, third one, and so on. This is on the bottom left is in Singapore. I think we went out for dinner.
I think it's the first Singapore one.
First
Yeah.
Singapore one. So I think this is the two first which are there.
Bhakta is there too. Yeah.
Bhakta's there too, yeah. So apparently then Bhakta discovered he's taught Kiat, who's sitting in next to you, Shiva.
Right.
Or he discovered which way kind of thing. This is the Singapore one at the National Design Center. There was one I forgot to sort of slip my mind, where we get stuck in an elevator. Big, huge elevator which transports trucks.
That's right.
Because
We got locked inside the entire Singapore Design National Gallery, really.
That's right. That's right.
They had to steal us through the back door on the back elevator. Yeah.
True. And so this is Narayan, my co-conspirator for, I think, 3 different companies, endeavors, whatever. And yeah, I think this is the fun of course, I think one thing that I totally regret is not having Ranjan and not having Vikas. They were never part of this. But yeah, I mean, in spirit, yes. I think I'm so glad that Mahendra Bhai could be old friends, old people, new friends, new people like Ravi Naidu, whose work I've admired always. So when we got listed alongside Design in Darbar as one of the world's most exciting events, I probably had the guts then to call him and say, hey, listen, Ravi, I mean, I've been a long admirer of what you guys do. Could you come over? And I think Ravi was part of that crazy year where everything went completely haywire. 2018.
Right. We'll come to that. But I think for people who do not know Ravi Naidu runs one of the biggest design / creative gathering that can happen on earth out of South Africa called Design in Darbar.
So
let's talk about 2018.
Yeah, so this was just one from 2019. I think this was the last time we partied, kind of.
Yes, that was the last. Yeah,
that was the last year's.
Mm.
Actually, this is another one. That's a whole bunch of people, including Koivin, former director of New York Times, digital director, and yeah, I'm there. A lot of people are there. I think this is Sajid's talk. Sajid, you were the one who was entertaining everyone, and that's the reason why people are laughing their heads off.
Joydeep told me to tone down the jokes also, but
despite that, imagine full on what will happen.
Yeah.
Let me just play this, and then we'll talk about 2018. Because
Nice. Yeah.
The Design Up Conference has been one of the best conferences that I've ever been to.
For me, it was an amazing experience. I was overwhelmed by the brilliance of the people and the designers I met. Actually, I think that the group I had yesterday on my workshop.
So you guys have got to remember this name. Jonathan Levy. Remember this name.
The conversation quality and the amount of critical thinking and questioning has been one of the most deep and profound that I've seen at conferences. I really respect and appreciate the diversity. I've seen women like Val, Head, and Tatiana get up on stage. I feel very excited to speak, and having a lot of female presence in the design conference, I think, speaks to what the future is. So I really appreciate you all bringing diversity in and making it a priority.
I'm blown away, to be honest. I think I have never seen a kickoff like this for a conference. People were opening up and experimenting and failing and trying again is such a key part of design. So it was a very subtle way to send a very strong message. And I really like this. The attention to detail for this conference is top notch. You can feel it's a design conference run by designers for designers. That's good to see.
Right. That's appropriate. I actually, that graph behind you actually said the number of desserts. And it says design makes tech edible, which is very cool.
That's thrown in there, of course.
Yeah. So I like running the complexity of creating a conference, right? 30 speakers from outside the country, conference is a management problem, logistics, people, process, tools, program management, including desserts, of course, and finicky about every small detail as we are designers. So how the hell does that happen? And tell us the stories in 2018. We don't have more than 10 minutes. We should wrap up, but
Sure,
sorry.
sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think 2018 was especially a crazy year because we we definitely scaled massively from 2017 in terms of speakers who had come from outside India. So we just kind of like the numbers went up quite significantly, almost like 2.5 times. The best was, or the worst was that I think this was Durga Puja time, and after Durga Puja, when you have all those meetups with people, and I'm coming back late night, I get a message from this guy in San Francisco, design sprint chap, saying, "Listen, we need to talk urgently, super urgently." And I give him a call, and he says, "I can't come. It's a Friday. He's supposed to be landing here on a Monday." And yeah, all hell breaks loose. So essentially, that night, me and Narayan talk about it. What are the options? Can we cancel? He's also supposed to be taking a master class, which means that people have paid bigger amount for his classes, and he's also supposed to go via Delhi and do a couple of commitments. So overnight, I reach out to my contacts in Europe and the US. Um, by next day, I'm in almost in less than 24 hours. We have not just found a replacement, but we have also bought her a business class ticket. I mean, she would not come without a business class ticket, of course. So I think that was one crazy kind of episode. So that's Friday, Saturday. On Monday morning, we get a call from the embassy in Tel Aviv.
Jonathan Levy. That's the name that I was kind of pointing to.
Jonathan Levy is cannot come to India. We are denying his visa because do you actually have whatever some form and some approvals to hold this kind of conference? And we're like, we don't get it. Then we realized that Jonathan Levy has actually applied for a conference visa, which has a whole bunch of things. And he is insisting, he is actually on a dharna there. He's saying, I refuse to move unless you give me a visa. So we talked to that guy. That guy is being super helpful. We actually then start, Sushma Swaraj was still around, and we kind of copied Sushma Swaraj. That gets some 80 retweets, and some it becomes some 150 retweets. And then we realized, oh shit, this is to do with some paperwork which we don't have. So forget all the retweets, just kill that whole conversation on Twitter. Then we go back, we negotiate, we figure out. That guy tells us in Hindi, listen, don't say that I told you, but उसको बोलना business visa के लिए apply करना. And he applies for the business visa. He gets through. He comes here. Later, we realized the reason why he actually had a sway in the embassy is that his dad is actually an ambassador to some other country, and obviously he had a diplomatic kind of angle to get all of those done. So Jonathan Levy's things are moved around, and he arrives at 3 a.m. like all tired, and he takes the slot at 3 p.m. the same day. So not just that, there was so much craziness happening. Tatiana, so that year, Suresh was our moderator. Tatiana has some 1962 laptop, and that refuses to work, and she has very complex stuff to show. And so at one point, Suresh has no option but to let everyone go for tea like 1.5 hours ahead or something like that. Everyone is out there and there's no tea, and then putting them back again is such a chaotic situation, kind of 750 of them, kind of. So
Yeah, but I think we learned it in 2019. 2019 was twice the size of that, but way more well organized and stuff like that. Things looked absolutely brilliant. JD, we have time for deconstruct. I have a question to ask you on deconstruct. Let me just ask you what deconstruct is first, very quickly, and then we will burst some design bubbles around very quickly to after that, and then we can move off to say bye to everybody. Deconstruct, what is it?
So deconstruct, last year we did this for the very first time, a detailed study of the design and tech industry in India and Southeast Asia. And I just don't mean industry, but studies, industry, academics, everything kind of included. So it's almost something which kind of we got inspired by the design and tech report by John Maeda. And we said we usually always go to the Western world and say, hey, what's happening out there, and take some leaf out of what is happening in San Francisco or New York or some such thing like that. And we don't really kind of come back to our own roots and look at our own kind of problems, issues, opportunities, solutions, etc. That's what we wanted to address with Deconstruct. We wanted to deconstruct the state of the Indian design in tech, academia, and industry. And I think Hemant very nicely put it in one of the webinars. This is possibly the first time that a usually it's an Accenture or any of these consulting companies who will do it. The first time a non-consulting company is actually kind of doing a report like this in India and for a lot of the Southeast Asian market per se. So that's probably deconstruct in a nutshell. It's about trends, takeaways, what's happening in the industry, things you believed in, are they true? Things you believed in, are they just biases? Those are the sort of things.
Okay, yeah. So, guys, there is I've got to do the plug. Jay can't do the plug. I can do the plug. There is a printed copy of this. But then if you actually go to designup.io, you can see a banner there. Click on it. You'll be able to download it. This is last year's. This year's is happening. But one thing that I wanted to kind of bring to notice is the idea of how important is design education. To be a designer in design and tech is one of the stuff that is frighteningly way off from the truth that we know. JD, will you just quickly throw light on it, and we can say a bye at that note, at that high note?
I think it's changing a lot. I think the people who are entering this tech industry a lot of them are actually not taught designers. A lot of them are engineers. A lot of them have done something else and they have come into the design industry. It's something which you always suspected, but I think if you suspect the 30% or 20% by that, I think it's probably more than that. The number is probably closer to 60% of people do not have a design education, or probably took a design education much later to do that. I would say it's a great thing, and we should probably be more inclusive and welcome it. But at the same time, I think some of the building blocks of what we call good design, I think that we need to maybe percolate it out there. I think that's a responsibility that we all have to get more people in the design fold. And I think a lot of them have hacked their way into design, UX design, partly like what we said, like print, it can be less, I mean, it can be much more forgiving actually. So you could kind of fail and you could experiment and you could kind of finding your foothold in that. But yeah, I think it's a lot of onus on us to climb down from our traditional good. We've been super lucky to have this great education and to sort of spread it around in a much more democratic way. Yeah.
And the ivory tower is shaken in that sense, which I'm very proud about, because I think the ability to kind of work seamlessly with technologists and business is what sets us apart in when you actually work as designers in business. And I think that I'm extremely proud of that, and that was kind of a validation. Whatever came in the report was a validation that actually, the truth lies elsewhere. Thank you, Sajid. Thanks a ton, and thanks, JD. We will kind of move quickly to just probably say bye to everybody. Sajid, do the needful. Do the
Shiva,
needful,
I
quote unquote.
want to add Malvika. She's going to be doing the word of thanks today.
Malvika, right? Yes, please.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you, Shiva. I will tell you, we're basking in the glow. It's lovely. But now, thank you for being a great moderator and questions, and knowing JD so well. It was a nice flashback. But I'm just wondering, JD, should I call you JD Bhai? What a wonderful journey. I mean, I was just thinking, are you an international man of Manchester's? I don't know. It was just really great to have that mystery kind of unraveled. And, I remember when we first met you, you were super, like 1 year senior. You were accessible, but not mysterious like the super senior people. And you were already kind of this pristine god who used to come sweating with these pink rosy cheeks, but a crisp white shirt. We haven't figured that out. And then we realized that you introduced us to Jap ivory and made us feel the smoothness of the texture of the smoothness of Jap ivory. I don't know whether you remember it, but I think it was really quite, that 100-watt smile hasn't gone away, and that still remains the same. So thank you for that, all that perfect white. You know how graphic designers just love that white.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it was just, I remember from NID, it was always awe-inspiring to see poster design that came out, whether it was somebody's pre-dip, whether it was a movie. You were pretty much skills superstar, and there was this perfection and detailing, which was, dare I say, in this casteist world today of, Bengal and Gujarat and all of that, it was, I think, pretty much your own comet trail. So thank you for that. And the other bit I think we want to thank you is that, what a journey of technology and design. I think if you can remember fax and telex and take us all the way to interaction design, and now discussing atomic design, design in an atomic world, it's really been quite fantastic this afternoon. And of course, I'm doing high fives through so much of it. So thank you so much. I mean, really, it's a tremendous and incredible journey right across the globe, right across technology, right across up and down of life and family, just superb. Dear friend of mine would say, Sala superb, yeah, but Bhagwan ne fursat mein banaya, but I would say JD ne fursat mein banaya. So thank you. Really nice. Over to you, Sajid.
Just want to add one more thing is that I think this whole format works that you get to know sides of a person which you don't know. I've been working with JD since he introduced me to graphic design till now, and I think what Shiva has managed to unravel. There's a lot of behind the scenes where they have discussed. I think JD's also had fun looking at his old files and putting this together. So you get to see the journey, and I think as Malvika said that what's nice is a very authentic sharing. What went wrong And that is one of the things we spoke about also, because this format is not just about work, it's about your learnings, because then we leave inspired from what not to do, what's work. So I think thank you sort of JD for putting that together, sharing it so authentically, and Shiva for this professional, besides just the mic look, but even the way you conducted was fantastic. So thanks a lot. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
And thank you for not worrying about the time. That's another thing which sort of went well. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, actually, Sajid, and thanks, Malvika, for the kind words. It's such a wonderful thing to be. I think it's a wonderful thing not to be reminded of the time and kind of just go on, which is actually terrible at times. But at the same time, this gave me the opportunity to really put together those files. So this morning, actually, Aisha and me were like looking through, hey, can you find that photograph? Do you have that? I can't find one of Srini. Can you find one Srini? Why is it not? Why? What happened to your pictures? I think it was a very different way of getting together, and I still have those OCDs about. And Aisha saying like, why are you sort of like tilting this way and that this angle and that angle and all of that? I'm like, yeah, I haven't finished it yet. Actually, still not finished. But in a way, it's a good way to put this structure together. So Shiva and I had a long chat yesterday night. Actually, we digressed completely and something else, and some graphic design and education and all of that. But it was a fun digression. And this probably gave the opportunity. So thank you, Sajid, for putting the idea together. And thank you, Malvika, for the very kind words. So yeah, really appreciate that. And good that so many of you stayed back despite the fact that I was thinking it's going to be Zain, Sajid, me, and Shiva. My wife and I have grown up on this. And I was like,
Yeah.
And just an announcement again for the guys who are listening on FB Live also. The coming Tuesday, we have Suresh Venkat, and he's going to be hosted by Roma. Roma is also on this call. I think she's come to observe and be prepared as a host. And the next Saturday, we have Suman Jayakrishnan, who is going to be hosted by Oni. So that's the two upcoming ones. So look forward to seeing you all back. And there's so many new faces. I've been seeing Bhakta after a long time. Nilima's videos, but seeing Nilima also here, Roma's coming, but then we've got the other regulars who have been there constantly. But lovely to see. The idea is also to make this like a reunion. So thanks, guys, and thank you again, JD and Shiva.
Pleasure. Thanks a ton. Have a
Bye.
Shiva's like
great
the Coke to the JD. He's like JD Coke.
So I've been finding pictures of Dhiraj Banerjee popping up from my old albums.
He's on everybody's photo album, I think.
Great, guys. Thank you so much.
Take care, guys.
Thank you. Bye bye, guys. Bye bye, guys.
Chalo, chalo, band karo.